Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening surrounds fathers and sons. The Saints had 6 players on their 2014 roster whose fathers were either NFL coaches or players. What 3 Saints are sons of former Pro Bowl players? There were 4 or 5 to consider here when you examined it, and I certainly did that, but here they are. Jarvis Bird, Gilbert, of course, outstanding defensive back. Cameron Jordan and Steve Jordan was a terrific tight end. Nick Toon, Al Toon was an outstanding wide receiver for the Jets. So there's your 3. It's a good list. Doesn't include Mark Ingram. A lot of people would have thought that, but his dad was not a Pro Bowl player. Ken Trahan, Sports Nola TV. It is time now for our hot seat segment where we place Brian Alley Walsh on the hot seat with a hot topic of the day. And with the combine going on and the draft around the corner, real simple question. Who would you choose if you had the #1 pick in the NFL draft? Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Trahan. Dr. Trahan forgot to mention, too, that what happens is I speak and then they all prove me wrong. Okay, he generally brings that up. Well, I'll do that for him today since it's our last show. I think it's becoming clear, if it wasn't clear going into the combine, that Jameis Winston is clearly the guy that Tampa Bay needs to take. Now, they're going to do their due diligence. I remember reading an article from Jason Lick, the GM, that they've still got stones to turn over before they make a final decision. Remember, we're 2 months out in this draft. But if you're looking for a franchise quarterback who's got all the PQs, that's Jameis Winston. The only question, and again, these are questions that are going to have to be answered over the next few months. Is he mature enough to handle that position? Not everybody is. We can go through Jamarcus Russell, players like quarterbacks like that who are not mentally ready, perhaps even physically ready to take that next step. Well, they're going to ask him to take that next step, and it makes me think of in 1978, okay, when John McKay's Buccaneers finished 2-12, and they had a top pick, and they ended up taking Doug Williams in the '78 draft. Doug played 4 years, led the Buccaneers into the playoffs for three of those times, and went on to have a tremendous NFL career. The Buccaneers find themselves in the same position now. With Lovie Smith, it's defense, defense, defense. And with Jameis Winston, he can be that one player that can help turn around that franchise. I would take him over Marcus Mariota for the simple reason that Jameis is ready to play now, all right? And Tampa's not as far off as people think. They're not as bad as a 2-14 record would indicate. I disagree with that their record, they aren't who their record says they are necessarily. But Jameis Winston clearly is the #1 player that should go to Tampa Bay. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Amy?
I think that I agree with you that Jameis Winston is the #1 pick, but it's for very simple reasons. I think it's for economics. I think that Tampa Bay is in a situation where they have got to find a way to put a winning team on the field that people are going to want to pay the ticket price to come and see, and someone that will be there for a while. Look, you spent the money last year on taking and getting one of the top wide receivers that's playing in the NFL now. Now you need somebody that can actually throw him the ball. Now, if you look at exactly what you have with Tampa Bay, you're right. They're not that far off. But considering what all of the aspects are that make up the NFL game, it isn't just what happens on the field. It's about somebody that city will rally around and actually want to buy season tickets to be there in Raymond James week after week. That being said, I don't think that Mariota is a lock in that second-round pick because Tennessee comes on the board next. What's very interesting for them, though, is whether or not they go that way or they decide to go defense. Although one thing that makes me, as someone from Louisiana, not necessarily a good sign for Zach Mettenberger that Tennessee is looking so hard at Mariota at coming in at that #2 pick. So 1 and 2 going to be interesting. I think Jameis Winston is a lock. I'm more interested to see what Tennessee does with that second pick.
Ricky?
Well, I mean, I would take Winston too, but they got to take Winston because, he played at Florida State, and those people run loving them out of Florida if they don't take him. But the second pick, Tennessee really don't need a quarterback. I think they got a great young quarterback. So I think they would either trade that or to get them a great running back, guy from Wisconsin or somebody. So I mean, I think they'll look more in that area. But you know, that's what. But I would have to take Winston. I mean, you know, if I had the first pick and I was a team, he would be my franchise guy. Even though he made a lot of stupid mistakes in college, you know, you seen yesterday and day before yesterday in the combine, he showed you that, and he told you, you know, he told the world that, you know, I'm a mature, go to a good young man. I made some stupid mistakes. So, you know, you have to take the guy's word for it and think, you know, you've seen Cam Newton now make a lot of mistakes, so you got to trust that the guy, you know, going to do right.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned Newton.
Yeah. That's a good example, right. Ricky. You know, this decision is so important for a lot of reasons, but in today's NFL, it needs to be a very good decision. Mm-hmm. They can't afford to miss on whoever they take, but I think it's going to be Winston.
Well, in summation, it's a very difficult decision because you have so many incidents whereby teams have invested their franchises in quarterbacks and they've crashed and burned. The name Jamarcus Russell was brought up, wasn't mature enough, crashed and burned. Let's not forget Ryan Leaf.
Yeah,
that was a decision that destroyed an organization basically when they had Peyton Manning sitting right there if they wanted him. And boy, you talk about a change of directions, that was a quick change. And most recently, even though it wasn't the top pick, it was a first-round pick in Johnny Manziel. The Dallas Cowboys had all the pressure on them, just as the Tampa Bay Bucks do right now, to select Johnny Manziel early in the first round. Everybody was pushing hard. Jerry Jones took a very serious look at it. Ultimately, he passed, went offensive line, and that worked out incredibly well for Dallas. How did it work out for Cleveland? Not very well. They're a mess right now because they went with Manziel. This is a very tough call. Ultimately, if you're asking me, I don't think I'd pick Winston. But if you're asking me what's going to happen, I think they're going to pick him for some of the reasons that were alliterated. He's a physical beast, reminds you of Roethlisberger, and he's a hometown hero type of guy. So I think that's ultimately what happens. Otherwise, if you're asking me, I'd take the kid from Florida or Amari Cooper, frankly, because they're sure bets based upon what they can do and what they will do in the league at their respective positions. But then again, it gets back to need as well. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, without a doubt, need a franchise quarterback. I happen to like Marcus Mariota. I think he's going to be an excellent quarterback, but it's going to take time. This is a guy that hasn't even huddled in college, much less taken snaps under center. So I don't care how smart you are. It's going to be an assimilation process for him to learn, and it's going to take him time. So ultimately, I think Winston ends up being that guy one way or the other, and it's a crapshoot. It could go either way. We might be talking about greatness or a flop. When we return, the Pelicans and more on Sports NOLA TV.